Hey gamers, I'm Amos McCandless and welcome back to the Guerrilla Report. Though I'm sure many of you out there remember great games you played in the past, such as COD 4, Halo 3, or Left 4 Dead, many of you have probably forgotten many of the suckier, more mediocre letdowns that you struggled to enjoy. The game we're hitting this week is Call of Juarez Bound in Blood, the expected to be better sequel to the original Gunslinger failure. Call of Juarez Bound in Blood is a sequel, well rather prequel, to an old western gunslinger game that got a lot of mediocre attention. And right off the bat, it's important that we make clear that Bound in Blood isn't as horrible as the original game it was based off of. In fact, there have definitely been some improvements from the first game that we'll get into in a little bit. When starting the campaign mode, you will immediately be confronted with one of the few cool things this game has to offer: choosing your campaign character. Call of Juarez Bound in Blood is based around a three-man brotherhood. You can choose to play as either Ray or Thomas in the story mode, but sadly you can't play through the game as their slightly metrosexual brother William. After every mission you get to change your character, and both of them offer uniquely differing weapon layouts and abilities that allow gamers to control their story mode a little more than in your average shooter. But one of the first fallbacks gamers will notice in the single-player mode is the control scheme. One of the developers at Techland must have been having a bad day or something, because Call of Juarez Bound in Blood has one of the worst control layouts we have seen in 09, where to sprint on the 360 is left bumper, changing your weapon is the right bumper, and Y is reload. And it's not like you can even change this later in the options menu, because the game only allows you to toggle between default and southpaw. Considering that this is practically the reverse of every control scheme that seems at all logical, we can only give Techland a virtual slap on the wrist. Generally though, gameplay is fun and makes you feel like you're surrounded in the Wild West setting. Though the graphics are nothing special, the constant screen shaking from dynamite explosions can be mildly immersive. Not only can you use a lot of BA weapons such as high-powered rifles, bow and arrows, dynamite, and dual revolvers, but when the time calls for it, you can snag a cannon or Gatling gun as well. Something else that Techland brought back from the original game is an ability called Concentration Mode, which allows you to slow down time, pick out targets on enemies, and then shoot the crap out of them in a matter of seconds. Though this is one of those abilities that you have to charge up for, slowly working up the concentration meter as you plow through more and more enemies, it can really be your best friend if you get caught in a bad situation. But looking past aesthetics, the campaign sadly does lack a whole lot of depth. Revolving simply around keeping your brother alive, following all these random yellow stars all over the map to get to your next checkpoint can seem tedious at times. Also, the voice acting resembles a low-budget audiobook from the 1940s, and it doesn't make it all discreet that the actors are reading directly off some low-grade script.
Sir, the enemy's punching through the left flank. We need to counterattack now.
What are you thinking, McCall? Did you forget how to salute?
Plus, with no cooperative story mode, it's not even like you can make fun of the bad voice acting with friends online. Other than the controls and the somewhat annoying story mode though, it really isn't that horrible. We couldn't see ourselves playing through this campaign more than once, but if you ever got dared to do it or something, we don't think it would be completely unbearable. This is one of those games where it will be a hit or miss with a lot of people, and recognizing that the Civil War/Old Western setting rarely gets taken advantage of by modern developers, we had no problem getting sucked into the gameplay. But as we all know in this growing land of Xbox Live and PSN, single player is merely half the game. Because few games recently have made an art out of replayability, multiplayer is what really makes a game worth its money. And sadly, Call of Juarez Bound in Blood was a bit of a letdown in that department. Running around frantically like an idiot trying to figure out what exactly the point of the game is will only leave you shooting at your teammates and getting brutally pwned time and time again. It will take you hours to figure out what exactly you're supposed to be doing, which is one of the biggest turnoffs to newcomers. Also, the online games tend to time out and crash a lot, even if you have a perfect connection. But sometimes it's for the best considering how boring multiplayer actually is. But there is one good thing in the online mode that we haven't seen in a hit game so far. In the weapons class menu, you can actually unlock different characters as you play more and more. So whether you're a fan of gunslingers, riflemen, spies, or hombres, there's a unique character and weapon layout for you. Also, you can even use money you gained in ranked matches to upgrade your characters until the end of the game, and there's even an achievement for it. Just to recap, the cool weapons and cannons you can use in Bound in Blood are actually pretty fun and make gameplay a little less tedious. Also, the new concentration mode feature that Techland added puts a much more adrenalizing dynamic on the quick-handed gameplay. On the flip side though, this is the kind of game where its pride is in its single player, and sadly, the story mode didn't completely deliver. For those gamers who like to be immersed in their storyline and feel that gameplay just isn't enough, consider staying away from Bound in Blood. Also, though it was pretty ballsy for Techland to try and introduce multiplayer in an old western environment, the online games are too much of a trade-off. Sure, you've got cool characters to work with, but everything else is pretty crappy. Our verdict, though Call of Juarez Bound in Blood is somewhat innovative, its value is questionable when there are so many better games out there to play. In all honesty, unless you're a hardcore OK Corral ripoff fan, this game's too rough around the edges and is probably not worth breaking a 20 over. Though the campaign definitely got a few gameplay improvements, the story wasn't exactly there. And though there were a lot of cool characters and unlockables online, the multiplayer was overall the game's largest fallback. No matter how good single player is, if replaying it is weak and there's no multiplayer to back it up, it's probably not worth your money. That's why here at Guerrilla we chose to give Call of Juarez Bound in Blood a mediocre 7.5 out of 10. Hopefully there'll be a really good Wild West game to come out in the near future, but Bound in Blood probably isn't your best bet. So until then, I'm Amos McCandless reporting to you from the front lines of gaming.